Matthew Joseph, Matty the Horse Ianniello, June 18, 1920, August 15, 2012, was a New York mobster with a Genovese crime family, of which he was once the acting boss. During the 1960s and 1970s, Ianiello controlled the lucrative sex industry centered near Times Square. He was convicted of bid rigging in construction, skimming union dues and extorting protection money from bar owners, pornography peddlers, and topless dancers as Times Square became filled with peep shows. Early life. Ianiello was born in 1920 in Little Italy, Manhattan, and was one of 8 children of his Italian immigrant parents. Ianiello allegedly got his nickname, Matty the Horse, in a youth baseball game. During one game, the opposing pitcher threw a hard pitch into the face of the batter. A fight erupted in which Ianiello knocked down the pitcher, who was older and taller than he. After this episode, someone remarked about Ianiello, "That boy is as strong as a horse." He worked as a waiter in a restaurant owned by his uncle in the Brooklyn dockyards, and then as a longshoreman in the Brooklyn Navy Yard, then joined the United States Army in 1943. He received a Purple Heart and a Bronze Star for valor in combat in the Asiatic Pacific Theater. After World War II, he and an uncle became partners in a second restaurant, Matty's Town Crest Restaurant. Ianiello was married to Beatrice May and the couple had 4 children. In 1951, Ianiello was arrested on charges of possessing heroin, but the charges were dropped. In 1960, Ianiello became partners with Edward L. Curtis, a longtime associate, in running private after-hours drinking clubs for gay men. Ianiello eventually owned a string of clubs and nightclubs for gay men, including the Gilded Grape and the Haymarket. Career. In the 1960s, Ianiello joined the Genovese crime family, then run by imprisoned boss Vito Genovese. Ianiello's sponsor was mobster and future acting boss Frank Tieri. Ianiello eventually controlled Amalgamated Transit Union, bus drivers Local 1181, giving him the power to extort payments from school bus companies in New York as well as the union drivers. On February 2, 1965, Ianiello was indicted on contempt of grand jury charges for refusal to testify. However, the charges were dismissed in 1966. In the early 1970s, Ianiello was promoted to caporegime. Ianiello then controlled over 80 restaurants and sex-oriented clubs in New York, including most of those located in the Times Square area of Manhattan. Officially, he still had a respectable job with the union. In 1972, Colombo crime family rebel Joe Gallo was murdered at Umberto's Clem House, a restaurant in Little Italy, Manhattan, owned by Ianiello's father, Umberto. On April 7, 1972, early in the morning, Gallo, who was celebrating his birthday with family and friends, arrived at Umberto's. When he arrived, Gallo greeted Ianiello. A Colombo associate sitting at the bar saw Gallo and immediately left to notify his superiors. Soon afterward, several armed Colombo associates stormed into the restaurant and shot and killed Gallo. Ianiello was in the kitchen at the time and missed the entire attack. Ianiello later claimed no prior knowledge of the attack and was not charged. The Nevada Daily Mail reported Matthew was at the cash register that night, but the proprietor dove into the kitchen and lay on the tile floor with his hands over his eyes as soon as Sonny Pinto and 2 out-of-town torpedoes known only as Cisco and Benny came in the side door blasting. The next thing he knew, Pete the Greek Diopoulos, a Gallo bodyguard, was pushing a gun in his face and pulling the trigger, but only clicks came out because it had been empty trying to save Joey. In 1985, along with Vincent Asaro, he was alleged to have demanded up to $1 million when seedy properties owned by gangster Michael Zaffarano were sold to legitimate real estate developers. Indictments. On February 28, 1985, Ianiello was indicted in federal court in New York on charges of racketeering involving the operation of several restaurants, bars and carting companies. Using telephone tapping on Ianiello's office, Agents assembled proof that he was skimming over $2 million from bars and restaurants and a topless bar in which he owned interests. On December 30, 1985, Ianniello was convicted on numerous counts, and on February 16, 1986, Judge Weinfeld sentenced Ianniello to 6 years in federal prison. On May 13, 1986, Ianniello was acquitted on all charges in the 1986 indictment on racketeering in the garbage industry. On May 17, 1986, Ianniello was indicted in federal court in New York on new charges of labor racketeering, construction bid rigging, extortion, gambling, and murder conspiracies. On May 18, 1988, Ianniello was indicted again in Newark, New Jersey on racketeering charges involving the 1984 Genovese takeover of a gravel company in Edgewater, New Jersey. On October 13, 1988, Ianniello was sentenced to 13 years in federal prison after being convicted of the 1986 bid rigging racketeering charges. Acting boss in 1995, Ianniello was released from prison. When Genovese boss Vincent Gigante went to prison in 1997, Ianniello became acting boss. By 1998, Ianniello was deeply involved in Amalgamated Transit Union Local 1181, a bus drivers' union. Through the union, Ianiello forced a medical center to pay $100,000 to renew their lease and then make regular cash payments in order to keep it. Waste management industry. Between 2001 and 2005, Ianiello received protection fees of more than $800,000 from Connecticut waste management businesses owned by James Galante. On July 27, 2005, Ianiello was indicted on racketeering charges in New York involving extortion and loan sharking. The agents that arrested Ianiello at his home reported that he was watching the film The Godfather Part 3 at the time. On June 10, 2006, Ianiello was indicted in federal court in New Haven on charges of racketeering involving trash hauling in southwestern Connecticut. He pleaded guilty to the New York racketeering charges and received an 18-month prison sentence, and he pleaded guilty in Connecticut and was sentenced to 2 years in federal prison to run concurrent with the 18-month New York sentence. Ianiello's attorney had asked for leniency, saying Ianiello had cancer and was in general poor health. On April 3, 2009, after serving 2 years, Ianiello was released from the Federal Medical Center, Butner. Death. On August 15, 2012, Ianiello died at his home in Old Westbury, New York, of health problems related to heart ailments and other illnesses, including prostate cancer. In popular culture, Matthew Ianiello is portrayed by actor Gary Pastore in the 2017 HBO series The Deuce. References. Further reading: Kelly, Robert J. 2000. Encyclopedia of Organized Crime in the United States. Westport, Connecticut. Greenwood Press. ISBN 0313306532. OCLC 41612361. Diapoulos, Peter. Lynakes, Stephen, 1976. The Sixth Family. New York, Dutton. ISBN 0-525-20492-X. OCLC 1991242.